how the general election next year can be used to kind of push some of that buzz from a general election back into student elections. So we've come up with a range of ideas which we're now going to demonstrate to you with some very bad drawings, or very, well, they were very bad drawings, and then Natasha made them good drawings. If you want to see the originals, they're terrible down here. So Natasha's now going to talk about the student impact map.
Okay, so we started off thinking about the general election and probably trying to get students a bit more excited about the general election and thinking about more the issues surrounding the election and less the kind of workings of the democracy. So we came up with this actually quite brilliant idea of the student impact map. Basically, this maps out the whole of the area around the local university. You've got the different wards separated here, and to get students a bit more excited, we've decided to list the population in each ward, the student population in each ward, and then the majority that the MPs got in the last election, so students can see the impact of their voting, what that can have. It's also going to have here, which we'll talk about a bit more in a bit, the tuition fee-ometer from that MP. So it's going to have a big red arrow. I'll let Andrea talk about it, I think, probably in a minute, showing students what their MPs think about tuition fees. And we're also going to have a bit of a fascist threat level. So depending on how many BNP candidates / fascist party candidates were voted for in the last election, we're going to have a little mini pie chart to show who got the most votes. So kind of making it a bit more, showing students their actual impact on voting and making it about the issues and about the kind of the people and the personalities and less about the structures.
Okay. We now have the tuition fee-ometer that you've just heard about.
Got the form, I've got the...
Which one, please?
The form.
We'll see if it plays. This is Natasha yesterday.
So our brilliant new idea from today is the tuition fee-ometer. This is basically to show students what their MPs think about tuition fees. It's going to have a big red arrow pointing to somewhere on the ometer, ranging from no more fees please, or give us lots more money. Hopefully this will link into the website They Work For You, so that as MPs vote for bills on tuition fees in Parliament, that the tuition fee-ometer will move according to what the MPs think about tuition fees. So hopefully it'll make it a bit more accessible for students to find out what their MPs' views are on tuition fees.
There you go. That was some audio explaining what this here is. So hopefully you understood that and you get the idea of how that will work. And the next thing is They Work For Students.com, which is basically bastardising They Work For You, but doing it for student officers rather than MPs. So it tells you when they were elected, how many votes they had, what their voting records have been in student councils, what they think about key issues. So you can go through, and then the idea is that kind of every elected officer in the country would be on it, so you can get a feel for kind of how all the elected officers sit on certain issues, which would be quite interesting. What's next?
Democracy tree.
The democracy tree.
And then that kind of links onto the union democracy tree, where you have a tree so everyone knows what the elected positions are. As you can see, we've got Animal as our president, and you know, a couple in the union council, so people know which positions they can actually run for. The information on there, if a position wasn't currently being held, how you can apply for that position and how you can be elected into that position. When you actually then go onto the officer, you get information about what they actually stood for, so what their manifesto points were. LinkedIn, very similar to the student thing that we showed you before, about They Work For Us sort of thing. And to give you an idea of what one of the manifesto things was, we have one of those somewhere on here.
Here we go.
Hi, I'm Mr. Black Steve, and I'm the elected birthdays officer. Now that I've been elected, I'm going to stick to my manifesto Even if your birthday's at term time, you'll get a fake birthday with me. So the idea being that people actually show what the manifesto points are, and you can see whether they're working through the manifesto points, whether they're actually sticking to what they said they'd do in the first place, and also what other interests they've got. So if you sit on certain committees, like they're interested in E&E or things like that, you'd link and you sort of almost tag them in little sort of tag clusters of this person does this person does that, so you know who the right people to speak are if you want to get involved with something, or you want them to, you know, campaign on your behalf. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. And our final thing is the election timeline, interactive timeline. Andrew's going to present.
We came up with the elections timeline to sort of make politics a bit more interesting for students with the whole personalities and issues thing coming together. So we came up with the idea to show the voting patterns for previous years in the Students' Union. And what we could then do was then, for a year, you could select that year, it would bring up a box with the officers that were elected in that year, the position they were in, the percentage of votes that they got in the election, and their manifesto as well. And then what students could do, and those officers could go on and upload photos surrounding that campaign. So if they had any photos taken on campus of the campaign and things like that, they could upload those, get a bit more personal. People could add a comment, there'd be a comment box for people to add information in. So like, I knew I should have voted for myself, I lost by 1 vote. And then we'd have a section for stories and key facts as well. Like, I know at UEA 1 year they had a gerbil became president, so we could put interesting things like that to sort of personalise the elections a bit more, make them a bit more interesting, and allow students to get involved with the history of it as well.
And then our final thing was to use a bit more video and go out and ask students and get their opinions on the election and post those into vlogs.
Hiya, we've just been to the polling booth. I think it's really important that students get involved in the elections, even if sometimes the candidates can be a bit odd, but it's really important. And I've dragged my housemate on and she never votes.
And I just really love Steve, and everyone wants an extra birthday, so yeah, vote for Steve.
So there's a couple more videos on there that you can have a look at. If you want to find out more about if you want to find out more about our ideas, if you go to studentdemocracyideas.tumblr, which is tumblr.com, they're all listed on there. So hopefully some of those are useful for you.